Okay, hi everyone. Like all things Davos, seat of our pants, wing it, because David, we didn't even get to meet out there. You were just rushed into
We
this
will
spot.
meet right now.
But I spent a little bit of time nearby you in MIT, so maybe we've got some common language we can find in the discovery of what we're doing here. So thanks for having us. I just got away from. I'm Michael Casey. I'm the chairman of the Decentralized AI Society, which is my latest little thing I've been doing. Before that, I was the chief content officer at CoinDesk, and most of my time as a journalist. But I did do a few years at MIT in the middle of all that. AI is a big deal. It's just kind of where we came out today. We all know it, and the sort of imperative to break down centralized controls over that, however that form that takes, and whatever mechanism we get there by, feels to many people like an urgent necessity, and may well be the ultimate use case for crypto, for blockchain. But I think it does face a lot of challenges getting there. And so we've got a tremendous panel who will bring some deep tech experience and some sort of like objective academic perspectives, some investor experience and all this, and we'll break it all down. So in the interest of time, what I want you to do each, just a very, very quick introduction of yourself. But as you do so, give us a quick preseason on what you think is the most urgent question that needs to be resolved in the realm of decentralized AI. So Jan, why don't you kick that off?
Thank you. I'm CTO at the Decentralization Foundation, and so I guess as you might have heard over the day, we're building the internet computer, and of course, being a computer on the internet, AI, of course, will be very important for it. And I think AI and blockchain, you might think it's just like, two buzzwords and joining. Come on, we bullshitting now, right? No, but totally not, right? I think actually there's sort of it's a match in heaven. Blockchain or rather, I mean, blockchain is a bit of a misnomer in some sense. It's really about decentralized, secure computing, securing our platform, and this Dom said before, right? Tamper-proof, all of these things. And so now you want to have AI running on a secure platform that's tamper-proof, that cannot be hacked, because AI is all about data, right? But data, collecting data, processing data, but in a very unstructured way that you cannot verify in some sense, right? I mean, AI is all this, essentially a bunch of matrix entries, and if you look at them, you have no clue what it is doing. It's different from normal code, where if you look at the code, I mean, you can analyze it. No, okay, this is now transmitting something here that's going through this list and so on. You cannot do that with AI. And so it's actually very important that AI run on trustworthy, secure systems that cannot not be hacked, because it's like a honeypot, right? If you can now modify this AI, it certainly gives credit worthiness to the wrong people. So that's one aspect of it. The other one is, like if you build a new platform such as the internet computer, people have to port their software over there. They want to build new applications. And that's the other thing where actually AI can help the blockchains. It's really like, mutually beneficial. And we got to see great things on that.
Okay, so a bit of a framework from Definity there and where it's all going to go. Alex, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you see as the biggest challenge for AI and decentralized solutions.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I'm leading the ETH AI Center, which is not Ethereum for those.
I think in the crypto world, does that become a problem?
Just needed to say this. So we're the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, and the ETH AI Center is basically our competence center for everything related to AI. So we have 110 professors, 1,400 PhD students. So we're one of the largest AI centers in the world. And we have also now the good situation that we were the launch customer from NVIDIA for the newest GH200 GPUs. So we have now 11,000 GPUs where we can actually build large-scale foundation models, which before was only something that a few companies could do. And our mission as a research institution is obviously to democratize the technology, to make it more accessible for more people in the economy, and basically try to use the technology to solve different problems that you have in society, because this is at the core of our mission, and obviously educate a lot more talents that have the capabilities to do so.
Okay. And David, give us your quick take.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. And since we haven't met before, I'll give you a quick introduction to myself. So I've had a 30-year career, about 10 years building neural networks at MIT. When the first backpropagation paper came out in 1986, I was the first person to pick it up at MIT and then implemented it on the largest computer in the world at the time, writing a lot of assembly level code. Did that for about a decade. Then after that was a serial entrepreneur and CEO for about 15 years. And then for the last 15 years, just venture investing. We've done 30 consecutive MIT and Harvard AI deals now, in all kinds of vertical use cases. So happy to talk about any of that.
Yeah.
And Alex and I were talking earlier today about the fact that he's recreating Llama 3 from scratch, which is incredible as a gift to our startups because, as he was pointing out, the cookbook that creates Llama 3 is in theory published. In actual practice, when you try and recreate it, a huge amount of the knowledge necessary to build foundation models is actually not in the public domain. And after he's done with this project, it will be. So thank you in advance for that.
So I think that's actually a really interesting place to start in some respects because, when I bring to the world this idea that I'm involved in this decentralized AI concept, there are a lot of computer scientists who say, well, that's a crazy idea. That you can't, to run machine learning, for example, in a decentralized environment is impossible. I sometimes think that's a little self-serving, and I think that it requires a bit of thinking outside the box. But nonetheless, given the constraints that happen for things like foundational models running in a decentralized environment, one could argue that the best way to solve the problem of the Meta being the owner essentially of this foundational model that is otherwise open source, but nonetheless throws back to its own central control is for a wonderful, benevolent institution like, Zurich producing it and saying, here, this is for the world, right? And I think the crypto community would like to say, these models we will bring to you through this wonderful other decentralized structure. So my question is basically actually to you two both, like, is it possible? Can we do foundational machine learning in a distributed, decentralized?
Yeah, that is an incredible question. And so what's going to happen next? This is the year of self-improvement. So the neural net AIs are improving themselves as we speak, and they're going to improve to some level. Nobody can predict whether it'll be ASI, absolutely super genius, or it'll get stuck. But it's absolutely happening right now as we speak. There are a couple places where there are 100,000 GPUs, soon to be 1 million GPUs working in a very tight cluster with massive interconnect. But there's a lot of research lately that indicates that you can distribute the computing and potentially get the same results. If you can distribute it, there's much more than 1 million GPUs worth of compute horsepower out there. If you link together all of the new chips on your iPhones or whatever, massive amounts of capacity out there. And so it's a hard fork in the road, and it comes down to a couple little tweaks in the algorithms,
Right.
whether it has to be done centrally or not. But maybe you know the answer already.
I'm pleased to hear that. What do you think? I mean, you've been digging in deep, right? Looking at how these clusters work. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think like one of the things that is quite interesting, and I think it was also mentioned a little bit in the previous panel, is the moment we assume there will be one super AI and that's it. I think at the moment we're at a very simple stage. It's trained on internet data, mostly text. Yeah, but we live, we're multimodal beings. We have a lot more understanding, and people get really crazy when they see that. Oh, it can read the screen, it can post these images. Well, it's I think like just the starting point of this. So obviously it works to a very, I would say, brute force level right now. We take a snapshot of the data that's on the internet, then we train a model, and then we fine tune it, then we ship it. But the reality is, in every second, the world keeps on turning, right? And it's not just world knowledge, it's our own personal knowledge, and it's also company specific knowledge. So I don't think we will run out of data. Yeah, I think we need better mechanisms that systems can learn more continuously and actively, and also deal with the different kind of things that every one of us has a different memory, a different world model in our heads. We have some shared things, but also things that we don't want to share, that we want to keep separated. And I think that that's a great opportunity space to think about how can we enable systems that continuously learn, that are not based on this snapshot based thinking that we have right now.
Okay. I'd love to, I think this is an incredibly important question. The large foundation models, they were $100 million training runs up until recently. Now with algorithmic breakthroughs just in the last couple of months, you can bring that cost down to under $10 million. But those capped out at an IQ of about 90 to 95. The IQ of a current O1 and soon to be O3.
What do you mean by that? So they measure the actual IQ of the model
you
itself.
literally take the model, you feed in raw IQ
And
test questions
measure
right
what
out, and you see if they can answer them or not.
Right.
And so, slightly below human average IQ. And that was just 4 months ago, 5 months ago. Now the chain of thought reasoning models that are on top of those, O1, O3, and a couple of others, have vaulted it up to an IQ of 120 in just a couple months. So IQ of 120 puts you at the top 7% of humanity IQ. And the amazing thing to me in terms of distributed computing is that the chain of thought component is not compute intensive and very well much easier to distribute it out to the network and to the world. And all the research now is switched over to how do you iteratively reprompt it? How do you make it think in some coherent chain?
So we say the chain of thought, like it's like how the neural network is strung together rather than the actual nodes themselves. Like,
I mean, it's so blatantly obvious if you play with ChatGPT. Like, if you go back to GPT-4 just a few months ago and you ask it a question, a tricky one, like, okay, I have a cone. I'm trying to fit the largest possible sphere into the cone. Give me the math to solve the problem. It gets it wrong. And you say, well, that's not right. And I can tell you, here's why it's not right. And it goes, oh, let me think some more. And it comes back and you iterate 15, 20 times and it gets it right.
Right.
And that surprised everybody. The people who built the models, the Ilios-Sutskever's, all of them are like, I can't believe how well that worked. And so that kicked off this whole, last 3 months of chain of thought research.
So the chain of thought thing, got it here because there's this idea of spinning up your own agent. I think the way that the world computer is looking at what you're going to have here, where I can have this intellect almost that I'm going to be engaging with, and I'll trust it because it runs in this environment. How do you deal with that, right? Because I think that's the idea that we're going to not have this monolithic single ChatGPT that's going to have the voice of God answering the perfect answer to everything, but rather my agent that I'm interacting with and my intelligence is being enhanced by that, and it's as well by that chain of thought. How do you feed that into what you're building?
Well, I think that there's a couple of components here, right? I mean, first of all, to me, decentralized doesn't mean that everybody contributes in some fashion, right? It just means that many parties, you replicate it, and then many parties, different parties own that replica, so that you have no single control, right? Because that's a whole different discussion. Maybe I can take another few hours here. But I guess, so if we distinguish between like the learning part and the inference part, which is, I mean, there's some feedback loops, obviously. And I guess it's just a matter of time on like how much powerful these things can be. And we're gonna demonstrate like on the internet computer like a 8 billion parameters model like in a few weeks, right? Yeah, and I guess the idea here is, of course, I mean, if everybody just would have their own model, being very resource inefficient, maybe, right? But if you have it, let's say a component like a like a library, so to say, where everybody can on top of that have their secure agent, right? And now because you're not talking to ChatGPT, where you know all the data, they feed on your data. Actually, it's on a secure system, right? And now it won't leak your data or whatever. You have like this layer on top. Maybe you do a rack, whatnot. All these like things on top you can do, and it's like that will be totally possible. And I mean, as we hear,
So this is an exciting intersection between the kind of trusted compute and the confidentiality that you can bring from that, and what you were talking about, David, of this like this chain of thought. Because now I can safely interact with this thing, and it gets smarter, and I get smarter through this interaction. But I did cut you off there, Alex.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say, like, I think technically it's impressive what you have enabled there, but I would probably bet a lot more on, how do we measure success, that this will be different, because I disagree that the IQ thing is a useful metric.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I think a metaphor that at least helps me quite a lot to think of AI in the next generations to come is something like every one of us gets access to 1,000 interns. So if you instruct them the right way, they do good stuff. If not, then it goes horribly wrong, right? And over time, there's also a learning effect on both sides. Yeah. So, and I think the discussion on the agentic side is mostly reduced on automation and so on. And you forget that for most of the tasks, there will be a human in the loop, which is very critical. And I think this is what the infrastructure could do, that you don't have this classical way of computing. This is where I think like a lot of the decentralized approaches can be actually superior. Because you want to enable this. And maybe there's in the future also a possibility that, my personal agent and yours can exchange skills and still retain, the confidentiality of the memories that we have there. Yeah.
So it also speaks a little bit to, I think, some of the conversation we keep on touching on about what data is actually being used for the training of these models, or even for the prompts and the inference that goes on, right? And I mean, I think it's quite telling that, the early versions of ChatGPT, there was this sort of weird biases and a lot of different sort of like the hallucinations and this, because I think it was trained on the public available data, which was the internet, and the internet is itself a result of a bunch of AI algorithms, run by Meta, run by Google, that have created these distortions. And so all of our humanity that's captured within that relatively narrow but nonetheless very large data set of information is itself a function of a bunch of bias. But you've got companies and research institutes and a whole lot of really important data that is connected to the solutions that I think you're alluding to here, Alex, the problems that need to be solved that are still behind paywalls or that are still behind restricted things. Does this model, right, the decentralized model and the confidentiality, does it enable us to now unlock that data and take this thing to the next level? And what do we need to do to get it going, to get, these otherwise probably very nervous, enterprises to unlock the data and participate?
I mean, that would be an interesting question from my side to you.
Well, yeah,
I think like one of the things is like, at the moment that we're so much focused on internet data, like one of the next investments from our side will be on domain-specific foundation model, because there's a lot of things that you can do there, and it's not actually easy to, like you say, to access the data. There are mechanisms in place to prevent memorization, because you don't want that the training data is leaked to someone else, right? But still, you need a way to manage this in a good way that you can actually pay for access to the data. And at the moment, this process is very manual. You go to certain data providers, you buy it, and so on. So I think that would be also like something that you can play a big enabling role if you have a solution on that.
Yeah, totally right. And also, if you do it in the classical way, you buy the data somewhere. Who tells you that you didn't sell it on and all of that, right? You have no control. And obviously, if you do that on chain, on a platform that actually enforces, like you can access the data, but actually it's clear how you do it. It's like transparent. You can have data marketplaces. You can get paid for it, right? Everybody can, make money with their data, all of that, right? So you have like at the end of it, trustworthy platform that has money in it, identity in it. It all comes there, right? And so it's
and the ideas are not new, but now we have large scale AI that actually needs this. So I think this is the difference to like 10 years ago.
I think one of the things that's most exciting about the fact that the chain of thought reasoning is working so well is that it allows companies to verticalize AI very, very easily. So if they have access to data, so if you have a healthcare application over here and a back office banking application over there, but you have proprietary data, you can very easily now implement an AI that's far better than a generic open AI for that use case, which means there's a huge economic incentive for those companies to get funded, to come into existence, and to figure out the data problem within that domain. And so when I teach at MIT, it's with Professor Ramesh Raskar, who's the top guy.
Just had a panel with him.
Oh, did you? No, yeah, I did. Saw him over at the AI House.
Signed on as a partner of Deus, by the way, so it's great. Yes,
but he's probably the top guy in the world in health data and using the blockchain to unleash health data. And he just got back from India, but it's pretty clear that all the health data in the world is going to come from India, because the regulatory environment is so much simpler over there, and you have a billion people.
Their ID framework, and does that?
He said there was something like 1/100th as many doctors per capita in India as there are in Europe, and so they desperately need AI medicine, and so they're more than willing to say, well, like, there's a lot, 1.4 billion samples of people here with health data. Let's make it available to the AI long before anyone in Europe or America will make their data available. And that'll probably be done via the blockchain and become available to the researchers all over the world. So great use case.
So I want to take this into a somewhat more philosophical place. I know you guys are all computer science and technicians, but I think like at the end of the day, it's hard not to think about these things. And there's a number that I keep quoting, and I really should update the numbers. I don't know whether it's the same, but it's certainly very large. And that was that, about a month ago or so, the market cap of the 7 largest companies in the United States was $17 trillion, right? And they are the very same companies we're talking about here. Their wealth was, amassed most recently by the AI surge. And so actually probably I think half of it almost has come from the last couple of years because of AI. But really the power comes from the the very strong pole position they had as a result of the last 20 years dominating the internet and creating these platforms on which we both, right? So the thing that worries me about $17 trillion is like, it's a currency. You can basically buy up any innovation, and no matter where it's going, you can basically, the growth model is such that every startup is going to want to like sell out them, which is why tokenization is interesting, because the model is different as to where the value is going to come from. But I suppose what I'm also interested in here, because it leads to this question, is part of what I see as a problem, at least in this early stage of the LLM, boom, is that it was founded on a bit of a race towards AGI. It was OpenAI versus DeepMind at Google. Palmy Olson's book, by the way, from Bloomberg journalist, won an award called Supremacy, a really good book about the sort of economics and sort of like almost drive to compete that drove it. But it was all about, we're going to be the first to get to AGI, right? This whatever the hell that means, we're going to be the one that gets there. And I think it all fed into this monolithic idea of the voice of God, the LLM that would answer every question. And you step back and go, well, look, is that really what we want to do? Surely the most important thing we should be doing is, Alex, what you're saying, like, find the solution. What is the healthcare problem that needs to be solved? What is the supply chain problem that needs to be solved? What is the climate change problem that needs to be solved? And so there was a concern, and maybe the dynamics that you guys are talking about now, with all these changes in algorithms and so forth, might be solving itself. But the problem was like the concentration of all that power and that race to one single thing was driving us in a direction that really wasn't solving problems. It was just this monolithic kind of social media driven voice of God answer.
Yeah.
Do we get there by default because this is where the algorithms are headed, or do we need the crypto community and all of us who are driving for this thing to push hard for a very different underlying model? It's that fork in the road, right? Are we going down utopia or dystopia, I suppose, is the part of it.
Oh, but that's the question.
Well, it is, to me, it's the same question. Maybe that's a biased view, but like, I think that at the end of the day, do we, by default of what's happening, end up in a much more distributed focus on some of these solutions, or is there action that needs to be taken by these sorts of people and policymakers and others to force an opening up of this system?
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt that the policymakers need to move very fast. Like I said before, 2025 is going to be known as the year of self-improvement kicked in. And it's going to accelerate like crazy from here on out. Regulators usually pass laws at a linear or even flat, rate, and we're on an exponential curve. So right now the AI community is gearing up to be self-regulated. Everybody I know who works in AI is incredibly ethical because they got into AI originally because they knew AGI was going to come in their lifetimes, and they wanted to make sure it was a force of good in the world. And that's what got them into the field. Now it's become such an economic engine that it's attracting everyone at Davos.
That's it.
Like, 2 years ago, nobody at Davos. Last year, a quarter of the people.
Is there actually a
everybody's
house
up.
on the promenade that doesn't have the word AI?
There is not. I mean, it is incredible, and that's appropriate
Yeah.
because it's going to be so dominant in world good or world bad, or your question over the next year. So it's very good to see, but it's here now, but it's not in. We had a congressman on stage a couple months ago and said, what fraction of the time do you talk about AI in Congress? He said, way less than 1%. Like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So, there's a very limited time. So I think when you switch your question at the end there to like, okay, there's a version of the world where there are a couple of companies, one of them or two of them win the race to strong AI. They control all power. There's another version of the world where it's distributed out. The blockchain's a big part of that. And there's an opportunity for everybody in the world to contribute, to use, to benefit. And that hangs in the balance of a couple laws. I mean, you can't answer this question because
part of it is it. We can't just do it by just building the best, most wonderful, world computer.
No.
Oh, what do you think, Jan? Can you do this, or do you need policymakers to help you?
Well, I think with all the technology getting adopted, right? I mean, it always takes a long time before people actually realize all the benefits, and so I think it's a mixture, right? It's about us actually telling the world what's possible and what's not possible, what the dangers are, right? And then it's about, at the end of the day, if nobody wants it, it doesn't get built like the way it should be built. There's a lot of like communication and like policy in one way or the other getting done. It's always, different parts of the world have different approaches to policy, more freewheeling, more trying to regulate. But I think at the end of the day, it's more like what people want, what the users want, what people on the street demand. I think at the end of the day, that's the decisive factor. Right?
So I spent a few years at MIT. I was at the Digital Currency Initiative and at MIT Media Lab, and I was always just so stunned by MIT's capacity to raise money from mainstream enterprises to fund all the research they were doing. And I think, Zurich is probably, not as quite as big, but certainly in the European and Swiss sense, massively connected to these big enterprises. Used to wheel me out at the industrial liaison program. Was a nice gig. They'd fly me and I'd just get to do my little dance about blockchain, and that was all the thing they did. But the reason I'm going there is because I think it feels as if, and certainly when you're in Davos, it feels this way, that these enterprises that are sitting on the fence, because say Congress aren't talking about it, enterprises are talking about it, but are they actually diving in because of their confidentiality concerns and so forth? They're not necessarily. They're all toying, but how important is it for them to dive in now? Because it seems to me that they've got the problems that need to be solved, or at least they could be the engine behind fixing those problems, and they've got the money as well. Are you talking to them, and how are they starting to see that these decentralized approaches give them a chance to participate more actively in AI?
Yeah, I think a certain level of going away from power concentration, more decentralized, is something that we will observe. But one more comment maybe to this. Initially, we said there are 7 companies with this incredible market cap and so on. I think if you learn something about AI in the recent times, it's that small companies, and at that time, for instance, also OpenAI was just a few hundred
True,
people.
it's a good point.
Made a lot of the big guys.
But it needed Microsoft to take it to the next level, though.
Yeah, this is interesting, right? What are the partnerships and so on? And I don't think that we just wait for AI and we plug it in and we're a transformed company. So many, like, this transformation will be extremely hard. At the moment, none of the companies has really a moat.
No.
That are the AI companies. Yeah, maybe they're first, maybe it's for some time. So the value capture will come. But also with the internet, people needed to understand it's not enough that people have a browser installed and then they're internet ready. They needed to come up with new business models. They needed to transform the organization. And I think this is why I think a few of these companies that you mentioned won't survive this time, but they are dependent on young companies coming up. And then it's an ecosystem question. And I think that's interesting, that I feel we're in a time where the big guys won't be able to digest this transformation. So we need a lot more young companies coming up that solve this, come up with new business models, ways to make money, because we don't know yet how this will turn out. And if you're an ecosystem enabler, then can be a quite good position to be in.
It's a good one for you, David, because I know you've got a lot of interest in startups and investing and so forth. So what's your strategy around it?
I've studied this ecosystem topic so closely for the last 5 years, because it's incredible how all the startups pop up in a couple little clusters around the world, and they become worth billions. We have 2 in our current portfolio that reach $2 billion valuations in under 2 years. I've never seen that before in my life. It took Google like 7 years to get to $1 billion valuation, and that should be drawing in anybody in the world that has an entrepreneurial mindset. But it only happens in a couple little places. And ETH is now on this incredible upslope as one of those. Media Lab. Massive. I mean, you should come back and check out what's going on there.
Will do.
It's amazing. And then Eric Brynjolfsson and now Sandy Pentlands over at HAI at Stanford. Unbelievable what's going on there. And, these ecosystems are connecting now. There's a lot, we have the common Media Lab connections, and we know Eric Brynjolfsson, and you do too. And so there's a lot of hopping around those labs now. But what's amazing to me is, when the computer science revolution was taking off, enterprise software and then internet, it was all the computer science alums that were doing it. But now that AI is good at writing code and getting incredibly good this year, you see a lot more domain know-how. I'm not a software engineer, but I understand, back office white collar account reconciliation or medical diagnosis for mammograms. I really know this domain well, and I can actually talk to the AI directly and build a company, a technical company that's fundamentally a software company with 2 software engineers, 1 software engineer, and 7 domain experts. And that's a new thing in the world. And I think that more than anything else is going to unleash because right now the technology is capable of, I'll give you one example really quickly. The head of State Street Bank, they have 30,000 people in ops jobs, $4 billion a year of payroll. And they said, I think AI might be able to do all of this. Let's pick just a couple at random and see if it works. And lo and behold, it works. Okay, then why can't we save that $4 billion next week And the barriers there are all about there aren't enough startups yet. And the management consulting firms, the Accentures, they've signed up $1 billion of consulting engagements each last year. But who's going to deliver on it? These are like, talking engagements, not delivery
Right,
engagements.
right. Well, it's almost in the interest sometimes to just keep the talking going.
Yeah.
It's a business model itself, right? So yeah.
Yeah. But everybody, the customers are all in. The enterprises are all in. You can tell if Davos is all in, then the enterprises are all in. But the ecosystem of companies, we need 100x expansion of companies that can deliver these.
There's a few of these prospective companies out here in the audience, and so it's a call to action, right? Like to get things going. And on that note, since we've got a minute left here, Jan, what is your call to action for folks who would want to build on Dfinity and
I think very much in what you
Reach.
just said, right? I mean, for Dfinity, we're building a platform into the computer, the work computer, if you want, and like for this, all new startups, they need to put their code somewhere, right? And then I guess what we are saying with AI, with the work we're doing, actually, it's very easy to have that all on the computer platform, and then just like that, AI can do it all. You don't even have to work with Amazon or Google and whatnot, right? You actually can own your data. It's all sovereign, and I think that also will address all the price and data.
Nothing to worry about.
issues, right?
Just come and join the party. It's safe. It's safe, everybody.
Totally.
In a way, right? That's the message. I think that's the main thing. All right, we'll round it up there. Listen, a round of applause for Jan Kamenesh, for Alex Ilix, and for David Blunden.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.